Hello, Akhilesh. Did you join? Akhilesh?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Now I can.
Visible and audible?
Yes, visible.
Okay.
We'll start in a couple of minutes. There are some participants who are coming now.
Okay, it's okay.
Okay.
Take your room.
Is there somebody behind you?
Yeah, it's Sherry.
I thought.
So both of us are in my department.
Yes.
Okay.
So we shall start now. Adia?
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. Our next talk is on Wilson Harris by Mr. Akhilesh Udayabhanu. Now I ask Suvarna to say a few words on Mr. Akhilesh Udayabhanu.
Good afternoon, everyone. Respected teacher and dear friends, I am glad to introduce Mr. Akhilesh Udayabhanu, Assistant Professor in the Institute of Multidisciplinary Program in Social Science, MAHATMA Gandhi University, KOTTAYam. He obtained a master degree from Sri Shankara College, Kaladi. He has completed his MPhil from MAHATMA Gandhi University based on the topic Aadhaar Card and currently doing his PhD. He is a renowned translator who has translated many poems in different languages, and many of his poems have been published even in national level. He has presented numerous papers in different areas like politics, history, Malayalam, and English literature. He is a versatile genius who enjoys traveling. Now, with utmost happiness, I invite Mr. Akhilesh Udayabhanu for the talk. Let's listen to his valuable words. Thank you.
Thank you for that wonderful, extensive introduction. Hope I'm visible and audible.
Yes.
Okay. So it is indeed a pleasure to be part of such a wonderful event. And thanks to the organizers, it's a wonderful idea to bring all these beautiful minds together and introducing them by, or we can say, people who are very much interested in talking about all these beautiful minds. And most importantly, the name Wilson Harris triggers me a lot. Not only me, but some of us in the academia. And I am reminded of Dr. V.C. Haddis. And let me begin. Can you present our slides, Subin? Subin, can I present a slide?
Please.
Okay. Can you see this?
No?
Okay. Now? Now can you see this?
Yes, now it's visible.
Okay. Thank you, Subin. So, Wilson Harris. Wilson Harris is one of the most influential Caribbean writers of the last 50 years. And he was born in 1921, as we all know. That's why he's part of this wonderful event. He wrote poems, novels, essays, and died in 2018. And what happened during his life is that he was writing and he was waiting to write, waiting to collect materials to write. And he died, and he taught in many universities and colleges. And his works are unique in terms of form and content. And his works are often regarded as difficult by both his Caribbean and European readers and critics. I think this point, why Wilson Harris is difficult, why his work is much difficult to read. I may be, interested in talking about this term difficulty in literature, especially difficulty in reading Caribbean literature. And this word difficulty reminds me of Gayatri Chakravarti's Peacock, whose works were also considered as difficult to read and comprehend. But she said, let them read, let us give them a burden. But the difficulty in reading Wilson Harris is different. It is partly because of its philosophical grounding in the works of Heidegger and Hegel, and partly because of its roots in Latin American tradition, myths, folklore, and the landscape of the country within which he was born. And even though he migrated to London in 1959, he was still in Guinea. So Guinea is the writing material for Wilson Harris. So the landscape of Guinea triggered him a lot. Its beauty, its terror, its freedom from fear, subjugation, quest for identity. And this is how I would like to introduce Wilson Harris. So let us think about what is the difficulty in reading and comprehending Wilson Harris. So now let's go back to some of the events, biographical details about Wilson Harris. So this is the country he was born. And look at it, when we think about Caribbean or Caribbean islands, there are a few countries, or not all Caribbean countries are islands. Maybe Dr. Sherry Jacob asked me to take this particular topic because it's an island. But later, he and I realized that this is not an island. And while going through the details, the cultural context, the social context, the landscape especially, I came to realize that this is a wonderful region to work with in wide varieties of ways. And look at the landscape within the map of South America. And he was born to the British Guinea, now Guinea, and he studied land survey and geomorphology. I found it very interesting that survey, the word survey is very much, the survey in literature, survey in life, survey within words, survey in thoughts. Think about this, a man who was trained in survey and geomorphology from Queen's College, Georgetown, the capital of Guinea, and his life and experience, life and career, how it works within writing, how it, in a way, beautifies his creative imaginations. And his life and experiences in Guinea greatly influenced his writing. And he worked as a government surveyor. And there we must think about a man who was a surveyor, later became a teacher and an acclaimed author, and who used all these informations that he collected, all these experiences, wide varieties of experiences. He himself led a number of expeditions into the Amazonian forest, into the interiors of Guinea. And these expeditions to Amazon reflected in many of his works. He developed a quest to search the interiors, the layers and layers of interiors. And the knowledge of the savannas and the rainforest that he gained from his career as a surveyor formed the setting of many of his novels. And let me show you some of the landscapes that is the material for most of his works. Hope I am audible. Can you see the document? Hello, Subin.
Hello?
Can you see the documents?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you could make it in a single window, that would have been better.
Okay. I'll do that. Is it visible now? So this is the
Yes.
Guinea, and this is the landscape within which he is, operating. Think about this, deep Amazon Guinea. And the knowledge of the savannas and the rainforest and the deep forest that he gained from his career as a surveyor formed the setting of many of his novels. And landscape is very, very important in Wilson Harris. And when we think about people like Wilson Harris, I'm reminded of writers like Salman Rushdie and Amitabh Ghosh, who were trained in different disciplines. Like Rushdie was a historian by academic training. On the other hand, Amitabh Ghosh was an anthropologist. Think about it, and they in one way or other, they use their academic training in fiction writing. What is real and what is fictitious is a question. And let's discuss about it in a different situation. But think about this. How can they write such wonderful fictions? They need material. And material means training and spending time with, spending every day with a particular material, analyzing it in a way, learning and unlearning it on a daily basis. So these experiences as a surveyor helped Wilson Harris a lot. So these are the landscapes that I was talking about. I think you can see the document.
Yes, visible.
Now, in an interview, Harris said, "The shock of contrast in river, forest, waterfall had registered very deeply in my psyche. So deeply that to find oneself without a tongue was to learn of a music that was wordless, to descend into varying structures upon parallel branches of reality, branches that were rooted in a stem of meaning for which no absolute existed. So this is what his writing is all about in a nutshell. Now, while I was checking about the details of Guyana, I was deeply interested in the landscape, the flora and fauna, and the music and the culture and the different forms of life. So I came across this particular national anthem of Guyana, and the first line of national anthem is "Dear land of Guyana of rivers and plains." Dear land of Guyana of rivers and plains. And this land, this dear land of Guyana of rivers and plains contributed a lot to Wilson Haddis's creative and critical imagination. So he has published poetry collections for the students. Petish is his first poetry collection that was published in 1951. And the second one is The Well and the Land. And he wrote and abandoned many manuscripts. And if you look at the publishing history or the writing history of Wilson Haddis, you can understand that he'll work continuously for some years, then he'll take a break. Like his first collection of poetry appeared in 51, second collection in 52. Then from 52 to 59, he was writing and abandoning manuscripts. And after that, he published 3 novels, 60, 61, 62, 63. Hope you can hear what I'm saying. Kelkamila.
Yes, welcome.
Okay. So these are 2 poetry collections by Haddis. And now let me read a poem by him. And this is very interesting. This is also related with his quest for the land and the specificities of the land. Sun poem by Wilson Haddis. Blue is the journey I long to go. White is the gate I open to show. The sun my face. Brown is the road that leads to space, where the sky falls down like the highest hill. Dark is the river where green trees sail, where nothing learns to stand quite still on the visionary road across the hill. Lofty is the spirit that wafts on high, like a flag of wind that is flown array. It is visible now to my naked eye and my naked mind. The flag blows out and wind blows in. The flag blows out and the wind blows in. They are one and the same like flesh and skin. My wood and my bone are burned in the sun. I wave like smoke, crackle like gun, march to meet the starry ground, where the camps are lit and the spirits sound. Their bugle for burning bone and tongue. So this is the poem from which we can get a basic idea of how it works and what it does. I mean, his body of works. So that's the 2 poetry collections by Wilson Haddis, Petish in 1951 and The Well and the Land in 1952. Then, as I have already been mentioning, he took a break of several years, and in 59, he moved to England and published his first novel, Palace of the Peacock, in 1960. And when we think about settling in cities like England or Paris or New York, it was mandatory in 1920s. But in 1960s, I think over-ambitious writers who are working for years, they need wonderful publishers. That's why they are, in one way or other, migrating to cities like London. But London is very important even in 1960s as far as publishing industry is concerned. So this is called the Guinean Portrait. First one, Palace of the Peacock, 1960. Second one, The Far Journey of Odin in 1961. The Whole Armor in 1962. The Secret Ladder in 1963. So see, 4 years, 4 novels. We can say novellas. It's not long novels, but 4 years, 4 novels. That's how people are working in writing and publishing. And after that, he published a trilogy. You can see in the document, Carnival, 1985. So again, he took a break to collect materials and to, to make it into a course of writing. Carnival in 1985, The Infinite Rehearsal in 1987, The Four Banks of the River of Space in 1990. And the last novels that we can talk about his works and in detail later, but let me give you a snapshot of sorts of events, literary events in his life. Recent novels, Johnstown in 1996, Dark Jester in 2001, The Mask of the Beggar in 2003, The Ghost of Memory in 2006. And within which Johnstown is very important because it talks about a genocide. It talks about massacre. Thousands of followers ordered by a cult leader called Jim Jones was massacred. And that is the event that discusses in the particular novel Johnstown in 1996. And this particular text is prescribed in many of the syllabuses in the universities of US and Canada and Europe as part of writing genocide program. And another important work is The Mask of the Beggar, which includes autobiographical elements. And besides novels, he published several non-fiction works and critical essays. He taught in several universities, and he made regular visits as a lecturer and writer in residence at the universities on both sides of the Atlantic. Interestingly, I was, baffled with this details. Interestingly, Wilson Haddis, a Caribbean writer, taught at the University of Mysore, India, and he died in 2018. And what I found, or what I have realized from all these details is that he was born, he worked, he collected materials, he meditated on it, he worked on it, and he produced a body of work which is available for today, and he is still alive through books. And that's about the snapshots of academic and literary events in his life. So a person who started his career as a surveyor and who led expeditions to the deep Amazon, who later became a teacher and who was a resident writer in different universities, who could gather information throughout his life and who wrote wonderful fictions. Now let's talk about his works. Now, Palace of the Peacock is the first novel written by Wilson Harris. And in this particular work, and in the preface of Palace of the Peacock, as an author's note, he cites that critics now see Palace within a context of magical realist, fiction, and therefore relevant across the years to an innovative tradition that has become fashionable, though scarcely articulated or considered in 1960. So critics now see Palace within a context of magical realist fiction and therefore relevant across the years to an innovative tradition that has become fashionable, though scarcely articulated or considered in 1960s. So this is an introduction to his work. When we think about magical realism in general, I always believed and felt like this is kind of a Eurocentric construction. Or when you read 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and when you read it parallelly with the Open Veins of Latin America, you won't find anything much magical about it, but you will find the blood in the streets in Latin American poetic sense. So when you think about the history of the continent, a history of a continent of people, passionate people, how can they find a linguistic embodiment of the pains that they have been suffering throughout years? How can they write about history of looting? How can they write about history of exploitation? How can they write about their rich resources and how they became poor. So here, though certain critics believe that Wilson Harris is a writer of magical realism, I don't believe so. I strongly disbelieve for certain reasons. Let me read two passages, one from Wilson Harris and one from Gabriel Garcia Marquez to, in a way, try to substantiate my claim. This is from 100 Years of Solitude. Let me read it. As soon as Jose Arcadio closed the bedroom door, the sound of a pistol shot echoed through the house. A trickle of blood came out under the door, crossed the living room, went out into the street, continued on in a straight line across the uneven terraces, went down steps and climbed over curbs, passed along the street of the Turks, turned a corner to the right and another to the left, made a right angle at Boondia House, went in under the closed door, crossed through the parlor, hugging the walls so as not to stain the rugs, went on to other living room, made a wide curve to avoid the dining room table, went along the porch with the begonias, and passed without being seen under a Miranda stair as she gave an arithmetic lesson to Orlando Jose and went through the pantry and came out in the kitchen where Ursula was getting ready to crack 36 eggs to make bread. Holy Mother of God, Ursula shouted. So this is a passage from 100 Years of Solitude. How can you think about magical realism in language? Answer is this, and so many other passages from 100 Years of Solitude. This is an instance from the novel. Let me read it once again. As soon as Jose Arcadio closed the bedroom door, the sounds of a pistol shot echoed through the house. A trickle of blood came out under the door, crossed the living room, went out into the street, continued on in a straight line across the uneven terraces, went down steps and climbed over curbs, passed along the street of Turks, turned a corner to the right and another to the left, made a right angle at the Boondia House, went in under the closed door, crossed through the parlor, hugging the wall so as not to stain the rugs, went on to the other living room, made a wide curve to avoid the dining room table, went along the porch with the begonias and passed without being seen under Amiranda's chair as she gave an arithmetic lesson to Aureliano Jose, and went through the pantry and came out in the kitchen where Ursula was getting ready to crack 36 eggs to make bread. Holy Mother of God, Ursula shouted. What is the context? What happens here? Sound of a pistol and someone is dead. And you can write it in this way, which means that in a way you can write violence in wonderful, magical ways. But when we think about the political history of Latin America, with the help of a large body of works, political works, like Open Veins of Latin America by Eduardo Galeano, maybe that is a bit outdated these days, but still you will get a wonderful new understanding about Latin America by reading both of these works. But let me remind you my claim. Magical realism was a Eurocentric conception in the sense that by calling some works magical real, you are avoiding the possibility, broader possibilities of undermining the deeper political impacts of the text. Well, let me say something from this particular work, Palace of Peacock, where a narrator is dreaming. These are two kinds of writing based on dreams. Think about this. The narrator is dreaming, and in his hallucinations, the narrator dreams that he had encountered with a strange beast, and there was grey light. And there is a difficulty in reading Wilson Harris. While we reading, there was a grey light, We cannot distinguish whether it is in the novel, whether it is real, or whether it is in the dream, or whether gray light is there throughout the novel. So there was an uncertain gray light while this person was hallucinating. So the narrator had encountered with a strange beast. He was wondering whether he was fighting with a dog or a horse, but it was half wolf, half donkey, neighing and barking. Think about it. And when he attempted to mount on the beast, it shrinks into half woman and half log. And the narrator raises his hand to cajole its soulful face, aging soulful face. Let me read it once again. I couldn't include this in the PowerPoint. So the narrator in the novel is dreaming. In his hallucinations and dreams, the narrator had encountered with strange beasts, and there was gray light, uncertain gray light. That was a bit confusing. And he was wondering whether he was fighting with a dog or a horse, but it was a half wolf and half donkey, neighing and barking. And when he attempted to mount on the beast, it shrinks into half woman and half log. And the narrator raises his hand to cajole its aging, soulful face. This is also another way of writing dreams. Hope I'm audible. So Wilson had, hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So writing, in writing, Wilson Harris developed his own concept of writing. He was known for some unique narrative technique, which was unconventional, and he used unconventional plot structure and narrative strategies, and very different from what we come across as traditional English novels. And his fiction consistently rejects conventional devices of plot, setting, and characters. And even after moving to London in 1959, his imaginative landscape is Guyana. And that word is a bit confusing. And he's setting cities, villages, or jungles of Guyana. And Guyana, or along the Amazon River, and his characters are Amerindians, Africans, and English descents, but not totally African, or not totally Amerindian, or not totally English. And he tends to have a blurring of different kinds of consciousnesses. And that's also confusing. And all these, make this particular author difficult with which we began the discussion. So he tends to have a blurring of different kinds of consciousness. Dream states and states of reality do get blurred in his writing. Dream states and states of reality do get blurred in his writing. And in a way, when we think about his themes in almost all novels, it's about conquest and colonization, but not in an ordinary way. Struggles of the colonized, clash of cultures, and the identity quest, and the quintessential identity quest. But he was totally against binary thinking, like black or white, like West or East, like Orient or Occident. So he was totally against the binary thinking. And this is very important. Harris realized that there can be some kind of reconciliation of the seemingly contradicting differences of humanity. So rather than thinking in binaries, there are certain gray areas, like there were gray light while the character was hallucinating. And when you think about Palace of the Peacock in general, the main character, the explorer, is Donne. Reminiscence of Donne himself. Again, there are characters named after poets. There are incidents that are deeply located in history like the expedition of Dunn into the deep Amazon forest reminds me of the expedition of Walter Raleigh to find El Dorado, and how he lost his head for not finding the fictitious El Dorado. Maybe writing is a bit different thing. And Harris realized that there can be some kind of reconciliation of the seemingly contradicting differences of humanity. And he was very much concerned with myth, and how myth is a form of meta-language, I think, and how myth across the world can help us mediate binary cultures. So myth can help us mediate binary cultures. So most of the themes that he discusses, most of the incidents, most of the landscapes, when you think about the landscape, how free and how horrible it is, how free and how tragic it is in that sense, when you think about a country like India. So there is conquest and colonization, not in the sense of a binary logic. There is a struggle of the colonized, again, not in the logic of Orientalism or any theories like that. So he was beyond binaries. He was working with traditions, folklores, myths, and everything and anything that was American, South American in general. So there was identity quest in his writing. And in all meaningful sense, he is the greatest English writer of the last 50 years from Caribbean. And if you read some critics like Michael Geigs, who says it seems almost as if, like the South American rainforest, an important image in the novels, Harris's work, once entered, reveals a phenomenal space, within quotes, phenomenal space, which belies the impression of impenetrability conveyed by the densely packed upper story of the leaves. And that's what the conclusion about Wilson Harris. It seems almost as if, like the South American rainforest, an important image in the novels, Harris's work, once entered, reveals a phenomenal space, which belies the impression of impenetrability conveyed by the densely packed upper story of the leaves. So that's what I wish to say, but still, I said magical realism is a Eurocentric concept. Meanwhile, if Wilson Harris is a magical realist writer, I would say he was trying to undermine the layers and layers of language and meaning and culture and myth and society within which he was born and brought up. Though his geographical location changed a lot during his lifetime, he was teaching here and there, he was working, but he was always in the layers of India. So that's what I felt, and Wilson Harris is a wonderful, wonderful writer. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, if the participants want to ask any questions, they can ask them.
Hello, Akhilesh.
Yes, Sudhi.
When he writes poetry, when I went through some of his poetry, I found that there is, when he uses the language, I was reminded of the metaphysical poetry. I don't know whether that's true or not. What is your comment on that?
I think reading poetry is a unique experience, somewhat mystical in that sense. I couldn't find anything metaphysical, but I think he uses a language that is very close to the landscape. That's what I found. I mean, how can you write a geography in a piece of paper is a question. How can you relate it with your personal instincts and emotions? Maybe my imaginative capacity is not that much that I couldn't find anything metaphysical. So can you relate it? What are the elements that you
use? Actually, the use of language.
Use of language.
And it is nothing to do with metaphysical poetry, but the use of language, especially he uses images with intellect.
Okay.
That part.
There is a possibility, Subin, in the way he was a surveyor, no?
Yeah.
And metaphysical poetry always used the names of scientific things, maps, cartography, that kind of stuff. Maybe I couldn't read much of his poems. Maybe he could have been used such kind of images in writing poetry, like the new scientific images. Maybe he was a surveyor, and throughout his life he was a surveyor of different things, of minds, of people, of world, of the landscape, everything. Maybe that's why. I'm not sure. So the language of metaphysical poetry.
Any other questions? Participants, if you want any clarification, you can ask right now.
Thank you, sir, for your talk on Wilson Harris. It was very interesting to learn how Harris' job as a surveyor influenced his creative imagination, and how landscape was very important to him, and how he rejected conventional plot settings and all. By listening to your talk, we could learn more about Harris as a writer. So thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the organizers for inviting me for this. And thank you for giving me an opportunity to read Wilson Harris more and more. And I started working on him. And he's a wonderful writer. Thank you very much, Subin, in general.
Thank you, Akhilesh. It was wonderful listening to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking forward to listen to the next talk.
Yes.